Hello, everybody. I'm Elma Britz of the True Green Alliance in South Africa, and next to me here is Ron Thomson, the CEO of the True Green Alliance. Ron, I want to ask you. Recently, we heard about 4 lions that escaped from the Kruger National Park. What is your view on that?
Well, to understand the full impact or what it's all about, you have to really understand a little bit about lion behavior. Um, Lions live in prides where you've got one or two males normally are dominant. One of the two males is always the super dominant animal, and they will have two, three, or four lionesses which periodically have cubs. And lions breed like cats. They breed very prolifically. The gestation period is only about three months, just over 3 months, and they will have up to 4 babies at a time,
Oh, that's very short, eh?
and they grow very quickly. At 22 months of age, your male lion cubs are bigger than their mothers. And at that age, when the females come in oestrus, getting ready to breed again, the 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 young male lions start sniffing around their mothers and the other lionesses there, and the big lions don't stand this. Even the big lionesses don't like it, and they chase the young animals out of the pride. So at 22 months of age, your lion becomes independent, and although it may be a fairly big animal then, um, it is not all that clever at catching game. Um, it then has to leave its pride. If it doesn't, the big male will kill them. But then it has to go and find another place where it can go and live on its own, or as a group of young animals. And wherever they go in Kruger National Park in South Africa, which is 8,000 square miles in extent, um, they find other lions, other prides of lions, all which are all occupying their own territories. And those lions, when they see the young lions coming in, they chase them away. So wherever they go in Kruger National Park, they find other lions in occupation of the land that they think that they can go and live in, but that isn't so. So these young lions have a hard time, first of all, finding enough animals to kill, finding enough animals that they can kill, and eating them without the hyenas and the other lions stealing their food. And they'd have a rough time for the next 3 years, 3 or 4 years, until they're big enough to challenge the big males and to take over the prides themselves. So they're pushed all over the place, and they have a very, very, very rough time. And a lot of these lions ultimately get to the edge of the game reserve, where there are fences have been put up to separate the human occupation of the land and the wildlife occupation of the land. And they easily sneak through the fences. There are very few fences are lion proof. And they then come out of the park, and suddenly they find they're in a bit of land where there are no other lions. There are no big lions to chase them around. And all around them they've got cattle, sheep and goats, which are very easy to catch. So they think that they have found the land of milk and honey. So they start killing the cattle, and they become stock killers. They can also become man-eaters, because in the game reserve they haven't had to contend with living amongst people. And if they can't catch a cow, they sometimes catch people and eat them as well. And that's why these lions came out of the park. They actually not escaped from the park, but from the lions in the park. And what annoyed me a few years ago was that there was an NGO thought they were doing the right thing by the lions, really goody people. And they raised money to catch these nomad lions that were outside the park and put them back into the park to save the lions. Well, all they're doing is they're taking them from an area of safety, relative safety, and putting them in amongst these other lions, which will promptly kill them. And very few people really understand what is happening with the lion situation. Now, when these young lions are outside, if nobody goes and shoots them and kills them, in protection of the stock for the local people, they will kill them, and they will kill them by using wire snares, cable snares, or poison. But they will get rid of those lions because the lions are now killing the people's own livelihood. So this is the conflict situation that arises when you get wild animals living with people. And with lions particularly, you have got the problem of them becoming stock killers and man-eaters. So what do you do with those lions? There's only one thing, I believe. There's surplus to the lion population in the park, so you may as well hunt them and just get them out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I've shot a lot of lions around Kruger National Park when I was a young game ranger. Most of them were between 3 and 4 years old, and they were all stock killers. A number became man-eaters. So in order to stop this conflict, you really have got no other option but just to get rid of the lions.
Now, what about the story about Cecil the lion in Zimbabwe?
Well, Cecil the lion was the same. What happens within a lion population is ultimately the dominant males in a pride get old. And they start losing their stamina, losing their strength, and younger males come in and oust them and kick them out. And then these older males become old nomads. Instead of young nomads between 2, 3, and 4 years old, now you've got lions that are 8, 9, 10 years old that have been kicked out of their pride. And wherever they go in the park, they find other dominant males in territories that they want to occupy. Mm-hmm. So like the younger lions, the older lions are pushed around from pillar to post. Now what happened in the Cecil situation was that researchers from Oxford University decided they wanted to find out what happened to these lions when they were deposed, when they were kicked out of their prides. So they captured a whole lot of them and they put collars around their necks for tracking them, just to see where they went. And they actually collared 65 lions, of which 45 were shot by hunters. And this was part of their plan. Their plan was that the object was to find out what happened to the lions. So when a hunter shot a lion, they knew where that lion had gone because they had a definite record of it. And this is what happened with Cecil. The animal rights propaganda came out and said that Cecil had been enticed out of Kruger National Park and then shot by a hunter. This wasn't true. The lion had actually been kicked out of the park by other lions that had replaced them in the park as dominant males. So as old nomads, they went out of the park and they found a place on private land, private game reserves, private nature reserve, where there were no other big lions, and they then occupied the land on the private land. And then the hunters were told that there are lions available, and they bought the licenses for the lions, and they went in and shot the lions legally. It just so happens people don't like the idea of anyone shooting anything nowadays, particularly lions. So that story went out, and it was totally and utterly untrue, totally untrue. But it generated the emotional interest that the animal rights wanted to generate over that lion, Cecil the lion. But in actual fact, once that lion had left the park, he was totally surplus to the lion population in the park. And the only place where lions are going to persist in the longer term is going to be inside the park. So the fact that the hunter shot the lion was anticipated, and it didn't do the lion population any harm, and it brought an awful lot of money into the country from an international hunter paying the very high cost of the licenses to hunt the lion. So that is the truth of Cecil the lion.
Thank you very much, Ron. This is a very interesting common sense that you are bringing into it, the story. Thank you very much.